I'm going to show you how to use REST and Orchestrator. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Watrous from VVork. If this is your first time here and you want to learn about automating, programming, and monitoring in VMware environments, you're in the right place. This is part 10 in a 10-part video series in which we're exploring how to make REST API calls. Here in part 10, we're going to be looking specifically at Orchestrator. In the previous two videos, we saw how we could use Swagger to quickly add multiple REST operations to our Orchestrator server. But sometimes what you want to do is just to call a single REST operation and get the job done as quickly as possible. So that's what we're going to take a look at next. Let's go take a look in the lab environment. In earlier videos, we saw that if you want to call a REST operation, there's essentially a three-step process. You need to first add your REST host, which you can see we've done here for the joke server. We did that by calling the workflow, the configuration workflow called add a REST host. And then we ran add a REST operation to add each of these REST operations. So that's two steps. The third step was to call the workflow called invoke a REST operation. But sometimes you just want to call a REST operation and you want to reduce the amount of steps involved. I like to refer to this as making ad hoc REST calls. So how would you do that? The trick that makes it possible to make ad hoc REST calls is a workflow that's already pre-supplied by the REST plugin. So let's go take a look at our workflows. And we've been spending our time in the configuration workflows for the REST plugin, but let's go take a look at some of the other workflows in the HTTP REST samples workflow folder. There is a workflow called invoke a REST host, and from its name, it's, at least to me anyways, that name is a little bit confusing, misleading, whatever you want to call it. I would have called this workflow something like make an ad hoc REST call. But whatever you want to call it, here's how it works. When you run this workflow, it asks a few simple questions. It wants to know the host that the REST server host, that is, not ESXi host, but which REST server do you want to perform the operation on? And as you can see, when I click here, it brings up our tree browser that allows me to pick the host. For example, I'm going to pick the joke server. Now, notice the technique that we're using here is not avoiding the need to run the workflow called add a REST host, but it's going to skip the other two steps. We're not going to have to call add a REST operation, and we're not going to have to call invoke a REST operation. So yes, you do need to add the REST host first so that we can select it here. But once you've done that, you select the REST host that you want to perform the REST operation, and then you just specify the tail end of the URL for the operation that you want to perform. For example, I want to call the operation called random_joke. So let's go ahead and run this workflow. And as you can see, it runs the workflow and it comes back saying that it's completed. And if we go look in places like the logs, we can actually see the response. So here's our response. Here's a joke. What I don't see here off the top of my head is the response code, at least not in the logs. So let's go look in the variables to see if the response code, the status code that we got back from the REST operation is there. So if we go to variables and let's expand this here, let's see. We got nothing here called response code or status code, but take a look here in the result variable. This is a property object that allows us to store information, multiple pieces of information in key value pairs. If we look at the result, you can see there's the status code. So you can get the status code if you want. It's just buried in this properties object along with the actual response itself. Again, both the response body, which is stored here in content string, and the status code plus other things are all in this variable called result. So again, that's quick and easy. If you want to make an ad hoc REST operation call, now you know how. Join me in the next video as we continue our exploration into REST and Orchestrator.